I'm going to do a quick intro on personality disorders. This is a very wide range of behaviors that encompasses a specific disorder, and the problem is that people with personality disorders typically won't be able to recognize that there's a problem. It takes a lot of, I'm not gonna say force, it takes a lot of effort to get that person into treatment, because they themselves can't understand what they're doing is not normal. Hence the word personality disorder. Now, everyone's behavior and responses changed given the circumstance and their setting. Right? Like, you don't talk to your mom the same way you talk to your friends, and you don't talk to your professor the same way you talk to, I don't know, your neighbor. Like, those are two different types of people, and the way you are at a birthday party is going to be different than when you are at a funeral. With personality disorders, however, it's the same. There's no actual change between that person's behavior given the setting, the place, the time, and the person involved or persons involved. That's the problem, okay? If you can't understand why it's not okay for you to behave that way given the situation and the people involved, it's called a personality disorder. Again, it's treatable. It's not always gonna work. Some people actually, like, the great thing about personality disorders is that it's comorbid with so many other mental illnesses, right? So you can have a personality disorder and have an eating disorder, or have a mood disorder, or what have you. Because it's so comorbid with all these disorders, treating them, like, the symptoms of it gets really simple. But, like, with medication, so you just need to give them some medication to help the symptoms of the personality disorder and whatever else comes with it. And the motivations behind what they're doing is also very simple. So it's easy to kind of recognize. I mean, because everyone's a little different, and even if somebody has a personality disorder, you won't be able to recognize it if you don't know that person very well. Or at least you need to be able to recognize what is problematic behavior regarding personality disorders. I'm doing these videos because there's so much misinformation online, and people don't seem to be able to understand what a mental illness is. It's exactly like any other illness that ever existed in the history of humankind. It can be terminal. There is treatment and there's cures for it. I know in the media and a lot of websites out there, they make it sound like it's not treatable, or like your life is over when you have a mental illness. There's a lot of stigmas associated with it, because a lot of people do a lot of bad things while they're mentally ill without being able to recognize that that's what they did because they're mentally ill. And if you're the type of person, say, like, you need to be able to take responsibility for your actions, that part is true, but hard to do so when you have a mental illness. Okay, so mental illnesses in and of itself, I mean, a lot of people make it sound worse than it is. I want to talk about the three main clusters. I think it's like, there's a paranoid cluster, or whatever, dramatic cluster, and then there's like the weird dependency clusters, and like three clusters of personality disorders, and it's called dramatic erratic cluster, and then the first type, cluster A is schizoid, schizotypal. Typically recognized, I referenced it in a previous video, that guy who thinks it's okay to have 3 friends, or 5 friends, or whatever, that's a personality disorder. I think it's called schizotypal personality disorder, where they have little to no need, or they have little to no want, actually. There's no desire in that person to create more social contacts, which is a problem, okay? You can't sit there and actually say that it's helping you if you only have like 3 to 5 friends in your entire life. They have no desire to make new social connections, and they're automatically very, very instinctively mistrustful and paranoid of people who aren't actually there to hurt them. Okay, this is an important takeaway with all of this. People who are threatening them and are actively wanting to hurt them, or want to abuse them, or only getting into a relationship to take advantage of them, some people can't recognize it, some people can't. Most people can. It's instinctive. Like you get this weird feeling in your gut, or like something feels off. There's like red flags everywhere, right? That alone is enough for a lot of people to kind of stay away from that person. But if that's the reason why you don't want to make any friends, because you think everybody's like that, right? You don't want to go out and meet new people. You don't want to like go out and like make new connections, so to speak, because everybody is like that, right? To you, like in your perception, everyone is mistrustful, and the only people you can trust are people that you met like and hung out with for the past 10 years, which are like 5 people, right? That's a personality disorder. Schizoid personality disorder is complete lack of wanting any relationships whatsoever, and odd or irregular patterns in beliefs and thinking patterns. So like they like to believe like weird crazy stuff, like butterflies are secretly bees, but then you can turn them into butterflies if you like pray hard enough or something, like stuff like that. Some crazy stuff like, oh, you know what, if you pray when it rains like 5 times in a row, then you'll win $1 million, and that's why I always have to like, I can't go to work. That like they actually genuinely believe these things to be true. Those are personality disorders. Right? How do people develop it? There's no actual clear-cut consensus of it given the research findings currently. People don't actually know how people start developing personality disorders. I have a feeling it might be just kind of reinforced beliefs due to that person's experience. However, just because somebody goes through the same thing a person with a personality disorder goes through doesn't mean that they're going to develop personality disorder. How do you recognize if somebody has a personality disorder? They're very odd in their behavior, and it kind of seems like it's okay to behave that way, but it's really not. Like, their responses, I mean, it's not like they're intrinsically selfish, it's not like they're there to hurt anybody, but their responses and the way that they go about looking at things and meeting people is really, really, really weird, right? It's like, oh, we're all here trying to talk about, like, I mean, you are at a birthday party and this person's just like continually talking about this weird thing about I'm gonna have to charge I don't know what else to say. Oh, the moon is really pretty. I'll show through my webcam. Hopefully you can see it. Is it? Can you see it? Ow. Right there. It's hiding in the clouds or whatever. Oh my god. Should be right there. Is it showing on my camera? I fucking can't tell. But anyway. Oh, also, I lost my set of keys. I don't know where I put it. And it had my knife sharpener on it. So I'm like thinking maybe it's somewhere that I just don't remember where. Somebody might have taken it. I don't know. But my point is, okay, if you meet somebody and you like, let's say you're at a birthday party and that person keeps on talking about some weird stuff, right? And it's like, okay, we're trying to have a conversation going, and then the responses are very irregular or not in tune with how anyone's really responding there, or like they're not really getting the vibe of the entire room, like they can't read the room or anything like that. That's a personality disorder. One of the most common misconceptions about personality disorders, a lot of people think people are psycho or that person's a loser or something. No, it's a mental illness, okay? Please don't think that people with personality disorders are inherently dangerous. I mean, they can get psychotic, which is a case with antisocial personality disorder, and ow. Is it charging? Oh, Jesus. Okay, with the case with antisocial personality disorder and like whatever, what have you, I just want to be very clear on this. Regardless of whatever personality disorder, including dependent personality disorder, when that person cannot function without another person, right? That person is like a baby right? And they refuse absolutely to go to the store without a consenting person, or like, you know, like to an excessive degree. Like they can't actually function without knowing somebody's always with them, like a caregiver always with them. And they get very anxious. Oh, also it is comorbid with ADHD and other types of mental illnesses, like I said before. With borderline personality disorder, which is a dramatic erratic cluster, including antisocial personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. Okay, those personality disorders are very, very, very well documented to be affecting people who have very little to no social life. Okay, and the reason why is because they suffer from a personality disorder, not that they don't want to. They put themselves out there, but they don't understand that their motivations and the things that they're looking for in a relationship is very abnormal compared to a sane, functional human being. Okay? So, I'm not saying they're insane or crazy, but they're not really all there. Just because with the dramatic erratic clusters, they are prone to going through psychosis, which is delusional beliefs, hallucinations, auditory and visual. So don't be surprised, not everybody with psychosis has schizophrenia. And schizophrenia is a completely different mental illness on its own, and I'm not really sure how effective their treatment is, but you're gonna have to be put on medication because of the fact that you're not really thinking clearly. And it's not your fault. You can't will yourself to think clearly. You have to know what thinking clearly is like. Because people with schizophrenia they're not able to think clearly. That's kind of like, everything is clouding their judgment, and to them everything doesn't make sense, kind of. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, another thing is that with personality disorders like antisocial personality disorders, none of these people are inherently stupid, okay? Some of them have very high IQs, they're very intelligent. However, the problem is that due to their behavioral responses and their motivations, it's hard to even talk to them about their interests. Because most of them have this weird warped outlook or these warped beliefs about other people. So I'm not saying, well, you may even personally think, oh my god, is that me? Like, do I have a personality disorder? I think if you did have a personality disorder, you would be checked in to see a psychiatrist at some point in your life. That's how bad it gets. Like, it's concerning to everybody. Every single person you meet, they know that there's not something wrong with you, but there's something wrong with what you're doing or how you're behaving, which is a little concerning. Some people can't tell if you're gonna try to hurt them or not, because, again, not everybody has, like, that instinct to be able to detect that kind of stuff, right? So, with antisocial personality disorder, again, it's a consistent pattern of ignoring these boundaries and this idea or concept of respect for another person, which puts a person at ease and helps to foster genuine and positive relationships with others in the face of getting it what they need and or want. So they have this thing that they need or want, and they don't really care if it's wrong or right or if it hurts other people. They're gonna go straight for it without recognizing that it's actually very detrimental to themselves and others. What is it that they're going after? And perhaps their goal may not even be that harmful. So their idea is like, oh, I need to pay my rent, right? I need money to pay my rent. Instead of saving money from their job or asking their parents or their friends or family for help, they go and steal it. Right? But they know it's not okay. They're like, yeah, stealing is wrong, but I need to pay my rent, and who gives a shit if anyone gets hurt? That's antisocial personality disorder. There's so many characters on movies that are like that, and they try to make it look as normal as they can. But the problem with antisocial personality disorder is that they can't recognize what they're doing isn't okay because it's hurting other people, because they start getting psychotic when you start telling them. Like psychosis as in like, okay, before you think that you're going through psychosis, please take into consideration, are you eating and sleeping properly? If those things aren't met, then yeah, you, like, I guess people don't really take it seriously, the effects of lack of sleep on a person, like actual really good sleep. That kind of stuff is going to affect you very negatively, so it's important for you to get a good night's rest. If you're not sleeping or eating properly, it's gonna affect your mood and also your brain function. Okay, so if you think that you're going through psychosis but you haven't eaten properly, like you haven't had more than one meal a day in the past week, and you only had probably like 3 hours of sleep a night for the past month, then I'm gonna go ahead and say that that's your problem, not that you have psychosis or you're going through a mental illness. But you never know, maybe it's because you have a mental illness which is affecting your ability to eat and sleep. But most likely, if you can fix the eating and sleeping patterns and you're feeling better and there's nothing really wrong with you, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say you're probably fine. Like don't freak out and panic and say like, there's something wrong with me, I gotta go on a million medications and like see psychiatrists every day. I mean, that's like a really bad case, you know, that's serious. Those are serious cases. And most likely it's not that serious case for you, a person. Histrionic personality disorder, pathological liar. I mean, to the point where they're just the chronic attention seekers. That's histrionic personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder, kind of like chronic attention seekers, except they're more oriented towards getting sexual satisfaction and living a very risky and possibly harmful lifestyle. Narcissistic personality disorder also goes in the dramatic erratic cluster. Like antisocial personality disorder, they don't really care who they hurt as long as it's for themselves, but their themselves is like the things that they're trying to go for, their goals are actually like very superficial and vain. Like they want better physical appearance, they want more money, they want to know more people, right? They don't want to get to know people, they just want to know more people. They don't really care about having a fulfilling career, they just want more money in their bank account. Right? They don't care about learning more skills, they don't care about their job, they just want to show up and get all that money. That's called narcissistic personality disorder. It might be confusing for antisocial and narcissistic personality disorder, but the clear-cut difference is antisocial personality disorder typically more criminal than narcissistic personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder people cannot function without somebody always complimenting them. Whereas antisocial personality disorder, they're not looking for compliments. Like, they're just kind of looking to achieve their goal by any means necessary. That kind of stuff. There's dependent personality disorder, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, all that kind of stuff. Again, that's a separate cluster, that's cluster C. With those obsessive compulsive personality disorder is like rigid and rigid adherence to rules despite it being detrimental. So they have a set list of rules and guidelines that they follow to the T without fail until the end of time, even though it's hurting themselves and or other people. They don't seem to understand what the rules are for and why the rules are enacted, right? They just care about following these steps and guidelines. That's obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Comorbid with actually obsessive compulsive behavior. Okay, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. But yeah, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Yeah, that's another mental illness on its own. OCD is like, oh, before I go to sleep, before I turn off my lights, I gotta clap 5 times and then turn off the lights, and then tuck myself in 3 times, and then when I wake up, I gotta turn the tap on twice, let the water run for 2 minutes the last time, and then close the tap, and then take a shower, and then do that again, and then I gotta go. That's OCD. It's very it's interfering with that person's life in every aspect, and when they don't do those things, they become increasingly upset, and they even start to believe that they're gonna die because they didn't do that. That's OCD. Incredibly difficult to treat. It's notorious for not being able to be treated. Even if for a brief period of time they're able to stop that behavior, they'd relapse and start doing that again. That OCD. That is OCD. What else? What else do I need to mention to people about stuff that's important? Please don't dismiss a person just because they have a personality disorder. I mean, there's so many stigmas associated with mental health issues. It's already bad enough that they have that, and the fact that they have it means that most people don't really care about them too much, or they don't even care about themselves, or they just don't understand what they're doing is harming themselves. To a lot of people, they're like, oh, like, it doesn't really make sense to me why you're like that, because, like, you're a grown person, like, why can't you just behave normally? And to a large extent, they're right. Right? Like, you have every right and every power for you to be able to be treated and recognize what you're doing is hurting yourself and or other people and all that kind of stuff. It's hard for those people without medication because it's an illness. You need some sort of supplementation for your body in order for you to behave normally. Right? And it's hard for them because they're not getting support that they need. It's kind of like people, to me, I don't take it personally, but I'm that type of person where I totally understand if I saw a sick person on the street, they're like coughing, especially in coronavirus season, they're coughing, they got runny nose, and they're running a fever, and they're like out in public, and they go to a store, like, and I'm at the store, I would be like, yeah, I would be giving them dirty looks too. 100%. Like, I wouldn't be, like, and I wouldn't be offended if people did that too. To me, when I'm sick and they're doing that, I'm like, yeah, no, I totally get it. I'm sorry. I know, you don't want to get sick, and you might even get sick because I'm outside, but I gotta do this. That kind of stuff. Like, I'm not really, trying to, like, force people to only go outside when they're perfectly healthy. I mean, we should be, but again, like, there's some circumstances that cause people not to be able to do those things, which is, again, perfectly fine. Anyway, please recognize that personality disorder people are out to hurt you, and that's not their intention, and that's something anyone can ever say that is true about people with personality disorder. Like, their idea and their goals isn't to hurt you. That is not even being taken into account with that person, but they are hurting you actively through what they're doing, which isn't okay, but they can't recognize this, okay, because of the personality disorder that they have. And why is it called a personality disorder? It's a pervasive socialization deficit that does not change, and they cannot function normally, and it's always present regardless of the setting, the situation, the people involved. That's why. Okay, it's hard to treat antisocial personality disorder just because it's even hard for them because they have so much criminal history in their record that a lot of people just dismiss them as a criminal when they're not actually criminals. They're mentally ill, right? So even coupled with that, they run into so much legal problems. It's hard to get them into treatment. It's hard to get them to even admit that they have a problem. Likewise with addicts, which is also a mental illness on its own, regardless of whatever addiction that you suffer from. Oh my god. Alcoholism. Addict. They're drug addicts, alcoholics, people who can't go off their prescription medication, also drug addicts, illicit street drug addicts, they're everywhere. Why is it important to recognize those things as mental illnesses? Because they aren't capable of understanding what they're doing is wrong. That's the thing, like, because when you start consuming those drugs, now you're starting to rework your brain into your life, and your perception is all about consuming said drugs. You don't care about anything else unless it's relevant to the drug consumption. It's hard for any addict to be able to recognize that's what they're doing. That the only reason they're doing any of that stuff is so that they can get more drugs or be able to support a lifestyle where their drug use is okay. Right? Like, I feel like crap about myself, I need a drink. Right? So they always intentionally put themselves in situations where they'll feel like crap about themselves, so they have an excuse to drink. That's called alcoholism. It's hard to treat, okay? Even, like, this is, I mean, again, if you can't understand the harm that you're doing to yourself and you don't care about that, there's nobody in the entire world who can care about that for you. Right? Like, you are responsible for your own life, and if you choose to do so, even regardless of how many things have been said and how many people have mentioned this to you, no one's ever gonna be able to wake you up, so to speak, from the harm that you're doing to yourself and other people. Okay, that's kind of, that's what that is. Yeah. Please don't, like, dismiss people just because they have a personality disorder. I mean, they may make great friends after they get better. You never know. Again, behind all those problems is a legitimate person. You know, they have preferences, they like to talk to people and talk to things and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like getting a beater car. Think about it that way. Like, your relationship's like a beater car. You gotta put a lot of work into it, or like you just kind of use it to like test stuff out or whatever. But again, I just don't want people to become abusive. Either be abused or be abusive to that person. Right? They're not really meant for that kind of stuff. How do you know if somebody has a personality disorder? Like I said, it'll be so obvious when you can still talk to that person, but like the responses don't make any sense. And you don't know why they're mentioning those things or trying to guide the conversation that way when that the situation doesn't call for it. But they don't seem to be able to understand that. Right? It's just kind of like, it's kind of like talking to a kid, except kids don't have personality disorders, like most kids don't. And they're able to hold on a conversation, whereas that person can't. And like, most people dismiss it as them being rude or aloof when it's actually they have a mental illness. And I get that because of so much stigma surrounding it, they don't want people to find out that they're mentally ill, that they need to see a psychiatrist, they need to go through treatment, people are gonna treat them differently, like blah 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 blah. I mean, honestly, I would really recommend that stop saying that about yourself. It's called self-stigmatization. Okay, you keep thinking there's something intrinsically wrong with you, that you're a innately flawed person, when you're not. You got hurt, or you got very sick, and that's completely fine. You need to get yourself into treatment, and hopefully it'll get better. The thing with borderline personality disorder is that they tend to switch sexual orientation frequently. It's comorbid with drug addiction and eating disorders, and they're always at like these weird seedy clubs or bars looking for new sexual prospects. They're very, very emotional. They're increasingly suicidal. So they're very, very... They have attempted suicide at least a few times within the past year. Just because someone's suicidal doesn't mean that they have a personality disorder, by the way. And also, it affects more women than men. But the treatment, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, which focuses on, let's stay away from trying to go do those things, right? But instead, why don't we do this? That should be a lot more helpful for you than if you were to do the other thing. So like, let's say, oh, I feel like I need to have sex with somebody. So they're like, instead of, calling a prostitute, which could be illegal, or going to all these strange weird bars and having sex with a bunch of strangers, or looking for sexual encounters online through dates or something like that. Maybe instead of that, why don't we just stick to watching porn and or masturbation instead? How about that? Like, just kind of the point of dialectical behavioral therapy is to supplement, or rather switch what their initial thing was to something else, right? Like, instead of cutting yourself, because people with borderline personality disorders cut themselves quite frequently, maybe instead of cutting yourself, you could just kind of get a red pen and like make marks on the body that you would cut, and hold off on cutting yourself. Maybe instead of getting blackout drunk, maybe hold off on having a drink for a day and see how you feel then. Just don't respond so instinctively to how you feel emotionally. That's kind of the point of dialectical behavioral therapy, and it's not, it's been proven to be very effective. In fact, majority of the people who go through dialectical behavioral therapy no longer meet the criteria for borderline personality disorder. So it's something that's incredibly effective, and it helps out a lot of people, and typically more women than men are afflicted with this disorder. With histrionic personality disorder too. Just be careful, because some people like to take advantage of people who are sick. Right? It's because that a lot of people won't respond positively to you, and it's kind of like whatever. But it's okay. It's fine. I'm kind of worried about me losing my set of keys, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, look, my point is, please don't beat yourself up if you ever get diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. Okay, or borderline personality disorder, or narcissistic personality disorder. It's really, really difficult to treat. It's just, if your therapy or your progress isn't working as well as you'd like within the first year, don't give up. Typically, for borderline personality disorder, it takes 2 years of treatment for that to be effective. Sometimes it's fine to go through treatment more than once. I don't know what else to say. Don't ever think that you are worth less than somebody just because you have some sort of mental disorder. Okay, you can get better. You need to actively put forth. And this is where the 12-step program comes in handy, where you're like, I recognize I have something to do with the way that my life turned out, and I'm ready to apologize or like make amends with all these people that I blah 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 blah. It seems like that's what I'm in, but I honestly, this is controlling for the fact that they're not actively going through any sort of social whatevers, right? Like, they're not going through chronic poverty. There's nothing really affecting them. There's nobody harassing them. There's no one trying to kill them in their life. Like, if those things are true, then obviously people are going to respond differently, right? It may seem erratic or abnormal until you see what they're going through. Like I said, this is like nothing's going on in this person's life. They've never actually went through significant trauma. They haven't had a series of negative experiences. They didn't have abusive parents. They weren't neglected. That kind of stuff. If those are things that they didn't personally go through and they're behaving that way, then yeah, it's called a mental illness. Okay, this is kind of where the stigma comes from, where that person should be normal, but they're not. Behaving normally, not that they're abnormal. There's something wrong with some people, but anyway. Oh my god, is it gonna rain soon? I think so. But anyway, please For the love of God, love yourself. You deserve to live a decent and loving life filled with loving friends and great relationships with your family members. And it doesn't happen in a day. I'm sorry. Like, you know how the saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day? Neither will that stuff be built in a day. Just give it some time, make some effort, and people will appreciate you for it. You know, just don't sit on your ass and think that everything's gonna fail. Because if you think that way, right? If you're going with the mindset that, oh, this is probably not gonna work out, or like, nyam nyam nyam, then yeah, it's not gonna work. Because you're already beating yourself up for it, and people can actually pick up on your emotions, like, right? You're already putting yourself in a bad emotional state. And they're not gonna respond favorably to people who are just kind of, it looks like they're forced to talk to you kind of stuff. So, again, not everybody's your therapist, right? You can't just expect people to be nice to you all the time. That's crazy! People, honestly, being nice to somebody isn't really a good thing. Like, you're nice to people that you don't like. Or, like, people that you have to put up with. Like, you're not really nice to people that you care about or you respect. Right? It's not really something that's really healthy. If people are nice to you all the time, maybe you take a look at yourself and ask yourself, is there something that I'm doing wrong? Like, why are people always so nice to me? I mean, if you're in my situation where, like, you're going through some sort of fucked up legal situation and criminal activity and, like, blah, blah, then you're like, oh, if people are being nice to me because they don't want to get involved, but they feel bad for me because I shouldn't be in this situation, or they want to help me out because they feel bad about what's happening, and that's kind of how they're going about relieving their badness feeling. You know, like, you feel bad about watching something happen, and your response about it is doing something positive to combat those negative feelings. So at the end of the day, you can kind of rest easy saying, like, yeah, at least I did something about it. That's called being a functional, independent human being. It's a good thing. Oh my god, I think it's actually gonna rain. Maybe I can still, like, But don't worry if things don't seem like it's going as well as you'd like, because life isn't something that you get to choose and pick and blah 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 blah.